Hi, I'm Jianwei Jiang. I'm an associate professor at the University of Albany, the State University of New York. Currently, we are doing National Science Foundation Cyber Learning Grant. The title of the project is called Connecting Idea Threads Across Communities for Sustained Knowledge Building. It's a DIP grant from the National Science Foundation. I'm the PI, and we have 4 co-PI, including 2 learning scientists, Marlene Scandamalia at University of Toronto, and Caroline Rosie at Carnegie Mellon University, and 2 computer scientists at my own university. They are Feng Chen and Minhua Chen. So we are testing our system of design in the elementary grade. Particularly, we're setting up a network of classrooms that will be studying the same overarching topic related to climate change and new energy. And grade level, grade 5, grade 6, content area mostly about science, but cross-disciplinary. And so that's our context of this project. So the main goal of this research project is to enable sustained knowledge building as a dynamic social system. Through restructuring the social, technological, and spatial configurations of learning. A particular interest we have is to enable more sustained progressive trajectory of inquiry and discourse. So instead of doing inquiry as a short inquiry lesson or short inquiry activities, students will be working on ideas continuously over several months or even across school years. The ideas are continually developed and then refined, leading to more advanced ideas, but also more advanced problems that identify that they need to work on. As an example, the student in our light study in grade 4 look at the different aspects of light and conduct research in parallel about how shadows work, how rainbows work, etc. And in the area of rainbows, they ask, how rainbows are created. And by doing research, they found that rainbows are created by the small raindrops hanging over in the sky that split light that create the colors. So that's a typical textbook answer expected of elementary grade. But they didn't stop there, but continued to dig deeper into the underlying mechanism. For example, why are the colors in the rainbow always in that same order? That leads all the way to the light spectrum and deep science in the physics. So this is the sustained form of inquiry that we want to see, that's sustained over several months. And then the critical challenge of this is that we need to help students develop this more sustained form of conversation and inquiry, as along the way, they will be identifying the deeper challenges and the deeper ideas that they need to work on. So there are 2 particular challenges to enable this type of learning. One has to do with time scale, which is we have to find a way to connect the student ideas over time so that they are not working on one idea in one lesson hour, but putting ideas on long-term trajectories, continuing working on them. So to build a long-term trajectory of ideas is an important challenge. The other challenge we need to tackle is the social dimension. So we're not only having the long-term trajectory within a small group or within one classroom, but find ways to develop this trajectory across a set of classrooms, a set of communities that work as a network. And both challenges require restructuring the space to make ideas connected and connected beyond the boundaries. So the space design in this project particularly focuses on the design of collective knowledge spaces online that connect with their physical space in the classroom. And the space are not limited to one community, but find ways to connect the different spaces across the communities. So thinking about the dimension of time scale, how we can place ideas and organize ideas on a long-term trajectory. So students will not only work on ideas in an isolated way in a short moment, but working on their ideas as a sustained trajectory. The current design of online discussions as a collaborative space tend to organize ideas as postings. So what's invisible there is their trajectory of ideas. So what's going on over a long-term of conversation. Let's say the conversation lasts over several weeks or even several months. So what's going on there? What has been achieved? What are the student main goal of their discussions? So we need to make the idea trajectory more visible for students to be able to better monitor it, organize it, but also share their achievement across the communities. So when we share the discussion progress across classrooms, the current design tends to focus on a single layer sharing, which is ask the student from a different classroom to visit the same online discussion space of the other classroom. And in that layer, it is very hard to understand the trajectory. So what's going on there? What's the progress? So instead of a one layer sharing, we are adopting and implementing a multi-level design to first have each community engage in focused conversation and inquiry in their own space. And then over time, they will select and organize their best idea threads, both for their own knowledge sharing and knowledge reflection, but also for knowledge sharing across communities. So as an upper layer of knowledge space design, beyond their local discourse space, we will have a macro level knowledge space for cross-community sharing. Students will be publishing their idea threads, each addressing a focal problem and involving a set of contributions made by the members in their community they identify as important. And so they will be sharing the knowledge progress in the form of idea thread instead of original postings. And the idea thread can include real classroom artifacts, for example, videos, notebook, interests, things like that, as the background data. So that will make their story of inquiry more understandable and transparent to the other classroom. The macro layer knowledge space we are designing is called Connecting Idea Thread of Use, because city. And students will be using the idea thread mapper that's part of the city to map out their own idea threads. That can, the discussion space can be in knowledge forum or in other CSCL platform. The student will be reviewing what's going on, what progress they have made in their local space, and selecting the best idea threads that they can share with other communities over time. So with this design, we hope that the different communities will not only engage in conversation with their own immediate peers, but they'll be able to tap into the ideas, the wisdom of other communities, working in parallel on the same or similar topic, including the ideas that have been archived by the past communities. So it's making the knowledge progress shareable, accessible for different communities to learn and to build on. That's the new system that we are envisioning as a social dynamic collaboration for long-term knowledge building effort in each community as well across a set of communities that work as a connected network. So the design of future learning spaces is an exciting area of research. I think there are a few challenges that we need to tackle. One is the integration. We have been developing different kinds of tools and resources and opportunities for maximizing student learning productivity and creativity in the classroom. I think the important challenge is to find ways to integrate the different components of the learning spaces supported by the different tools, different resources in a seamless space, a seamless trajectory and flow of learning so that we can maximize learning along not only one dimension like a space, but along the dimensions of a cognitive, social interaction, and temporal progress. So the integration of the different tools as well as the integration of the different dimensions in the same design will be a significant challenge to tackle. The other component of the challenge that I'm thinking about is to find ways to design and extend the collective knowledge space, not only for sharing information, but for creating and developing ideas. So it's a collective space for knowledge creation, where students develop their own ideas instead of only accessing the ideas from someone else. And in this sense, the ways to organize their ideas, the ways to present and share their ideas that connect with the physical work in the classroom is another layer of integration or connection. So what's the dynamics? What's the design that we can use to enable this dynamic connection between what's going on in the physical space and what's going on in the collective knowledge space? And in this whole process of collective idea development through online and face-to-face interaction, one important challenge is to make sure that students are taking on the responsibility to structure their learning spaces and practices. So they will be the primary driver in deciding how their learning spaces should be structured dynamically to meet the need in their learning and collaboration. And so in this process, for them to take on this responsibility, it's important for them to engage in high-level reflection in terms of what I'm doing in this space and how that relates to what I did in the past, and how what I am doing is connected to what we are doing as a community and what they are doing there and then in some other spaces. And all this have a sustained temporal dimension, which is the learning taking place in the past and in the current and for the future. So I think this openness across social level and temporal dimension are important to consider in designing the open future learning spaces. So the design of future learning spaces, I think we need to think about a few important principles and features. The first suggestion I would give is integration. Integration of physical learning space in the classroom and in connection with the cyberspace online and the spaces available, accessible to the student outside of the classroom, also physical spaces. All the different spaces need to connect with each other in a way that can support dynamic flow and dynamic integration of the different learning activities. As one interesting activity that I observe in my research project is that the way we structure their cyberspaces oftentimes have a big impact on how they organize and shape their participation in their physical spaces in the classroom. For example, as they define the major learning goals, the major problems that they need to research in a knowledge building project, they will be formulating the different views or different discussion spaces in the online discussion forum. But as they engage in the interaction online, they are also working interactively in their classroom, forming into what we call opportunistic groups. And different groups will be focusing on different topics related to the inquiry, and they need to find their space in the classroom. So if they sit in a corner at a desk, or maybe close to a set of books. As they engage in this kind of practice over time, they tend to identify certain space as linked to a certain knowledge theme. So they will be saying, oh, I need to talk to the eye people when they are doing work on the brain, and look at how we have different senses. And they refer to that particular space in the classroom, a table, as a marker or representation of a particular component in their collective knowledge space. So this seamless integration of the physical space in relation to the online space as a good reflection of their important focus in the project. So that's one suggestion I would have, is a fun ways of integration. The second principle probably would be openness. That's in relation to the integration. So to support the open learning space, that the student can do something in their classroom, but as the needs surface or emerge, they can quickly connect to something else, a different resource or a different group of people in a different space. So that level of openness and timely access is important for initiate that dynamic interaction. And for the integration, it's important to think about how the different spaces work together in a coherent way to support productive social and material interactions, interacting with ideas and people, and interacting with artifacts physically there in the classroom. So this will be an important criteria to consider, is to see how the different components of the learning spaces are actually working together to support coherent, productive social and material interaction. Again, it's taking place there in the classroom, but also across boundaries. That will be, I think, the important dimension of thinking, a framework that can guide our design of future learning spaces.